Edinburgh, in the year 1780, was a city of two worlds, separated not just by architecture, but by morality. On one hand, we had the new town, orderly, enlightened, and wealthy. On the other, the old town, a labyrinth of stinking wines and overcrowded tenements. William Brodie was the king of both. By day, he was a deacon, the head of the incorporation of wrights and masons. He was a master craftsman, so respected he sat on the city council. He walked the streets in his fine white suit, tipped his hat to the gentry, and discussed the philosophy of the Enlightenment with men like David Hume and Robert Burns. He was the man you called when you wanted a mahogany desk that would last generations, or a lock that no common thief could ever hope to pick. But respectability was a mask. To understand Brodie, you have to understand the pressure of that mask. Every day, he was a pillar of the community, and every night he was drowning in a double life that would eventually tear the city apart. He didn't just fix furniture, he scouted crime scenes. He didn't just install locks, he'd memorize their weaknesses. He was the ultimate insider, a social engineer who understood the intimate details of the elite because he built the very desks where they kept their secrets. He was the man you invited into your home, the man you trusted with your keys, the man who was planning to ruin you. Let's look at the actual how. This is where Brodie becomes truly chilling. He didn't use a crowbar. He used a piece of putty and a master's eye. Imagine the scene. Brodie is invited into the home of a wealthy merchant to repair a cabinet. He's left alone for just a moment. Perhaps the homeowner has stepped away to fetch a glass of sherry. In his pocket, Brodie carries a small wooden box filled with soft, warm beeswax. He takes the house key hanging by the door and presses it firmly into the wax. It takes less than 5 seconds. By the time the homeowner returns, the wax is hidden back in his pocket, and the key is back on its hook, untouched. Back at his workshop, on Brodie's close, under the flicker of a single candle, he would pour molten lead into that impression. He would file the metal with the precision of a jeweler until it was a perfect replica. Between 1786 and 1788, a wave of ghost burglaries hit the city. Shops were emptied of their finest silver, and private safes were drained of their gold. Yet there was never a sign of forced entry. The doors were locked from the inside. The panic in Edinburgh was palpable. People began suspecting their own servants, their own children. Friendships were ruined as neighbours accused each other of having spare keys. And all the while, Deacon Brodie sat in the city's council chambers, nodding gravely as they discussed increasing the budget for the town guard to catch the supernatural thief. He wasn't just stealing their silver, he was stealing their sanity. He enjoyed the game. He enjoyed being the smartest man in a room full of victims. Why would a man with everything risk it all? The answer is a toxic cocktail of greed, gambling, and a double life that was spiraling out of control. Brodie had 2 mistresses, Anne Grant and Jean Watt, and 5 children hidden away in the slums. Neither woman knew about the other, and neither knew about his Deacon persona. He was supporting 3 separate households on a single income, and the math simply didn't add up. To fund this, he became a regular at the Cape, a secret club where the city's underbelly gathered to drink, fight cocks, and gamble on anything that moved. He was losing money faster than he could forge it. To scale up his operations, he recruited a shadow cabinet of 3 desperate men: George Smith, an English locksmith, Andrew Ainsley, a shoemaker, and the dangerous John Brown, a man with a price on his head. This wasn't a gang of professionals. It was a volatile mix of high society, intellect, and street-level desperation. Brodie was the mastermind, the man with the keys, and the social standing to provide cover. They met in low-end taverns in the Cowgate, drinking cheap ale and planning heists that would target the very foundations of the Scottish economy. The tension between the gentlemen and the common criminals was a ticking time bomb. Brodie thought he could control them, but in the world of true crime, honour among thieves is the first thing to burn. He was playing with fire, and the smoke was starting to reach the new town. March the 5th, 1788. The target was the General Excise Office, the Fort Knox of Scotland. This was meant to be the retirement school that would clear Brodie's debts and allow him to vanish into a life of luxury. They had the keys, they had the masks, and they had a plan. But fate has a way of intervening in even the most meticulous plots. A clerk named James Bonar had forgotten some papers and returned to the office late. In the pitch black of the hallway, he nearly collided with one of the gang members. The heist collapsed in seconds. The gang panicked and fled into the night, leaving behind their tools and taking only £16, a pittance compared to the thousands they expected. The city went into lockdown. John Brown, seeing the writing on the wall and the £150 reward on offer, turned state's evidence. He confessed everything. The police raided Brodie's workshop and found what they called the Wall of Keys. Hundreds of wax impressions and skeleton keys, the city's most secure locks. But the Deacon was gone. He fled to London, disguised as an old man in a wig, then boarded a ship to the Netherlands. Even while on the run, his arrogance was his undoing. He couldn't help himself. He wrote letters to his friends, bragging about his escape, even giving instructions on how to care for his fighting cocks. Those letters were intercepted in London, and a king's messenger tracked him to a boarding house in Amsterdam, where he was found hiding in a literal cupboard. A cabinet maker caught in a cabinet. The irony is staggering. The trial was a media circus. 700 people crammed into the courtroom to see the golden boy of Edinburgh in chains. He dressed in his finest suit, maintaining the mask of a gentleman until the very end. But when the forged keys were produced as evidence, the city gasped. The verdict was inevitable: death by hanging. But the final irony of William Brodie is the stuff of legend. Years later, Brodie had lobbied the city council to update the gallows to a drop mechanism. He claimed it was more humane and efficient. On October the 1st, 1788, 40,000 people watched as he stepped into his own invention. There are rumours he tried to cheat death, that he wore a silver tube in his throat to keep his airway open, and had a physician waiting to revive his body. But the Brodie drop was too efficient. He died on the very machine he had designed for others. A century later, a young Robert Louis Stevenson would grow up in a house where his father owned a cabinet made by Brodie. Stevenson was obsessed with the idea that a man could be both a saint and a sinner. That cabinet wasn't just furniture. It was a physical reminder of the darkness hidden in plain sight. That thought became the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Stevenson realized that the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones in the woods. They are the ones we invite in to fix our furniture. William Brodie's story reminds us that the masks that we wear can sometimes become our reality. Subscribe to Griff's next chapter for more in-depth, true mysteries.